My jaw dropped. Mike Mayock's jaw dropped when he was watching Jaylen Walker's Georgia tape, getting ready for the NFL draft. Mike Mayock, former NFL draft analyst, former Raiders GM, Las Vegas Raiders GM, Oakland Raiders GM, didn't necessarily do the greatest job there. And I've actually been looking at a lot of comments about what he said about Jaylen Walker, and people are saying they just don't trust his opinion. But what he said has some validity to it, and I want to get into it because look, Jaylen Walker's a guy who, if the right team falls in love with him, he could end up being a top 5 pick in this upcoming NFL draft. That is huge for the Georgia football program, racking up all these, not just first-round picks, but like high-level draft picks. Jalen Carter going at 9 recently, Nolan Smith in the first round, Jordan Davis, I think at 13 or 14, Trayvon Walker at 1. Jaylen Walker, Micah Williams could be up there too, but Jaylen Walker's most likely going to be the first Georgia football player taken off the board, and he's drawing comparisons to Micah Parsons. And what people need to understand is that Micah Parsons is one of the best defensive players in the NFL. If people really think that about Jaylen Walker, he's going to be very successful at the next level. Some people like him better than Abdul Carter. It seems like Mike Mayock's one of those guys. There's a lot of what he had to say about Jaylen Walker. I'm going to bring that to you. I'm going to talk about my thoughts as Jaylen Walker on Jaylen Walker as an NFL prospect. Obviously, I've covered him the last 3 years, and look, he is one of the freakier players that Georgia has had recently. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about the NFL draft. What do you guys know when this time of the year rolls around? Obviously, we're in the dead period. Not really with spring football, but I love talking about the NFL draft. Always going to bring you what's going on with the Georgia Bulldogs in terms of that. And let's not waste time. I want to show you some of the quotes from Mike Mayock because they were big. And let's start off with this part. He goes, "My jaw dropped watching him run. His twitch, his speed, his quickness, his change of direction. But what really intrigued me is on the sub packages, they played him everywhere from the A-gap over the center to all the way out wide as a pass rusher. And I have in my notes all over the place for Jaylen Walker. Every tape I watched, I have Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons. He reminds me so much of Micah Parsons." It's pretty big praise. People have compared Abdul Carter, right? The defensive end line, kind of outside linebacker for Penn State, who is in contention for the number 1 pick. All right, I think it'll probably end up being Miami quarterback Cam Ward that goes to the Titans. We'll see if there's a trade or something changes. But Abdul Carter is in play for a top 3 pick, and if not, then a top 5 pick. Will enough people look at Jaylen Walker's tape, look at his numbers, and say, "Hey, you should consider him over Abdul Carter"? I don't know. Abdul Carter is very, very good, and he's a little bit bigger than Jaylen Walker. He's a little bit heavier. And to be honest, I mean, he made just as much of an impact, if not more. His numbers say they did. 12 sacks, 2 forced fumbles this past year. Jaylen Walker, 6.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. We know a lot of that production came against Texas. So to me, yes, there are some concerns with Jaylen Walker. Now, they asked Jaylen Walker to do a lot. And they asked him to do more than they did Abdul Carter at Penn State. And that's why he's drawing the comparisons to Micah Parsons. I just watched an interview that Jaylen Walker did with an NFL Network analyst or reporter at Georgia's Pro Day that I was there covering. He did not work out because he's dealing with thigh injury. He'll have private workouts soon. He said his favorite thing to do is rush the passer, but he could do everything. He played at that star position in the nickel back. He played over center. He played middle linebacker. He played outside linebacker. They moved him around everywhere. And to him, and probably to the NFL, they're going to view that as a major asset and part of why he is in contention for a top 10 pick, probably a top 5 pick, depending on if there are trades or if someone just falls in love with him. But Micah Parsons is a huge comparison. Michael Williams gets comparisons to Trayvon Walker, right? Because of the length, the size. Trayvon Walker, I believe it was double-digit sacks this past season, and obviously was the first overall pick in the draft for Georgia a couple years ago. My only concern about Jaylen Walker would be why wasn't there more production? Other than that, why were there some games where it didn't seem like he was making as much of an impact? That's something that you have to go back and watch the tape. They asked him to do different things in different games. In the big moments that mattered a lot, he was pretty productive. I think that something else that you get with Jaylen Walker and you get with a lot of Georgia players, partially because they come out of this Georgia program. And there's a few things actually. One, he's a champion. Okay, and I think that matters to people. The fact that they've been through that, they know what that feels like, they know what it takes, and that kind of couples with my second thing. He knows what it takes to win. He is willing to play whatever role is asked of him. That's something that's pretty common out of these Georgia players, and I think is going to help him. 4, the Kirby Smart development tree. People care about that. And 5, the athletic versatility. And 6, because I keep thinking of things, as I wanted to just talk about too, I keep thinking of more things of why you should draft Jaylen Walker. And I'm not saying he should be the first overall pick, but he definitely is worthy of a top 10 pick, is the attitude, the mentals, the character, right? He's someone that Kirby has appointed as a leader since a very young age at Georgia, and is someone that he wants speaking to the media. He's someone that he wants leading people out on the practice field, someone that he wants leading by example. Jaylen Walker is kind of all those things that you get in an NFL player. You don't necessarily get that out of every player at Georgia, but he is one of those guys. Malachi Starks is going to be one of those guys too. I want to read a little bit more. I'm going to bring you another quote from Mike Mayock when he was just gushing over Jaylen Walker, because I think it's interesting. He said, well, first he's comparing Micah Parsons and Jaylen Walker, and he said, what do they do best? Even though they're an off-ball linebacker half the time, is they rush the quarterback. And then he goes on to say this part, which I think is really interesting. I think the only limitation, this kid's 21 years old, he's a third-year junior, he's got all this upside. I think the only limitation is a defensive coordinator with a lack of creativity, because this kid can play all over the ball. I think he's the next level linebacker, edge rusher in the NFL. And if you've got to chase Jayden Daniels all over the place, this is the kind of kid I want doing it, whether it's off the edge, which I think it's going to be, or as an off-ball linebacker. Jayden Daniels is fast. Jayden Daniels instantly was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL as a rookie. NFL Rookie of the Year, led the Washington Commanders, that Washington Redskins Commanders franchise, to the NFC Championship, a game away from a Super Bowl. They lost to the eventual Super Bowl champions in the Philadelphia Eagles, to a team that had a lot of Georgia Bulldogs on it, right? Jaylen Walker is one of those types of players that you do need if you've got a Jayden Daniels or a Josh Allen or someone that can make game-breaking plays with both their arms and their legs. You want versatile athletes out there on the field. So I think that this is really high praise from Mike Mayock and what he's having to say about Jaylen Walker. I watched it up close for 3 seasons, so I know that there's a lot of validity to what he's saying. He's fast. There's plays where he's surprisingly fast. I do think that he could get faster in terms of the NFL level. He is twitchy. He's strong. He's a little bit shorter than what you'd want, I think, for that position, but it's not something that's necessarily going to hold him back. It's the instincts and the versatility and the creativity with Jaylen Walker that's just going to get him drafted very high in this draft. Now, in mocks, I've seen him go as early as 5 to the Jaguars. I've seen him go as early as 8 to the Panthers. I've seen him go 10 to the Bears. I've seen him drop to 15 to the Atlanta Falcons. In fact, I've actually seen him mock to the Atlanta Falcons at 15 more than any other team. And he would love to play at Georgia. He actually said something about that at Georgia's Pro Day. I think he'd love to stay and play for the Atlanta Falcons and stay close to Georgia. That's definitely something on his radar. But he's the kind of guy who wants to play anywhere and just wants to play for an organization that's going to let him use these talents. High praise from Mike Mayock. Thank you for watching. Newsletter, Red Zone, BetMGM. Those things are down below. Make sure you're checking that out. I should have pumped that earlier in this video. And we appreciate your viewership.